Supporting Language in Music Therapy. My name's Hilary Eyre. I'm a music therapist. I did my Bachelor of Music Therapy at Wilfrid Laurier University and graduated in 2024. I also did my training to become a neurologic music therapist in 2024. And I'm currently a second-year speech-language pathology student at Western University. So today we'll go through the definitions and importance, and the basics of what you need to know and why it matters, supporting language, benefits of music therapy to support language, and then a couple of practice cases to apply what you have learned. So definitions and importance. What is language? Language is the shared system of sounds, words, symbols, and rules to communicate wants, needs, ideas, and information with other people. It includes both understanding and expressing meaning, and language is what allows us to create relationships, learn and share knowledge, solve problems, and express ourselves. Language is essential for school, work, and socializing. So what's the difference between a language disorder and a developmental language disorder? Language disorders are difficulties with language that causes obstacles to learning and communication that is associated with a known diagnosis. So the difficulties with language are caused by a secondary diagnosis. Whereas with developmental language disorder, it's difficulties with language that causes obstacles to learning and communication that is not associated with a known diagnosis. So what is DLD? DLD, or developmental language disorder, is persistent difficulty understanding and using language. It is lifelong. It starts in childhood, but it will continue into adulthood. And it is hidden. This means that it can be mistaken for other things, and it's also a disorder that cannot be seen. So what are the signs and difficulties in DLD? Children with DLD may have difficulty with attention and listening. You may find them staring blankly, needing questions repeated. They may be distracted by things around them. They may be asking what to do after instructions have already been given. They can also have difficulty understanding language. So they may be unable to remember vocabulary and their meaning. They may copy other children without understanding why they're doing what they're doing. And they may ask questions. They may not ask questions even though they don't understand. They may also have difficulties with talking. So they may look blank when asked a question. They may need to be given more time than other children to answer questions. And they also may have words come out in the wrong order. Children with DLD may also have difficulty forming friendships and interacting with peers. You may find them standing on the sidelines, remaining quiet during conversations, taking too long to formulate a response, or being confused during play with others due to misunderstandings. And finally, children with DLD may have difficulties with reading, writing, and academics. So these students may struggle to start activities. They may use short sentences. They might use sentences in the wrong order, and they might miss grammatical endings such as the ing, and they may be unable to answer comprehension questions. The impacts of DLD. There are many impacts to having DLD, including social, academics, behavior, and psychosocial. First, we'll start with social. These kids with DLD may have difficulty sharing their ideas and experiences. They may have misunderstandings with peers. They may have difficulty building relationships, and they may be onlookers during play and play solitary. Academics. Children with DLD may struggle because learning depends on understanding language. They may need explicit teaching of language to understand, and they may be perceived to have lower academic ability, or they may mask their needs. Behavior. Kids with DLD may have the perception of being lazy, misbehaving, or choosing not to follow instructions. But in reality, they just have difficulty remembering or understanding their instructions. Psychosocial. Kids with DLD may feel unseen, unheard, and undervalued. They may have lower confidence and self-esteem, and they may experience anxiety, including intolerance of uncertainty, rumination over past experiences, and a negative interpretation bias, which means that they are biased to believing that their experiences will be negative. So what is the prevalence of DLD? DLD has a high prevalence. It is approximately 2 out of 30 students in a classroom, and a percentage of 7.58, and is nearly 7 times more common than autism. So, why should music therapists care about DLD? First off, there's the prevalence of DLD. So due to its high prevalence, you will likely work with someone that has DLD at some point. And caring about DLD and using language strategies can help support kids' participation. Additionally, the strategies that are used to support DLD may even be helpful for other kids that don't have DLD, and are overall just good strategies that don't interfere with the learning of other kids. And finally, music therapy can support DLD in other contexts. So music therapy can incorporate things that are being worked on in school or speech therapy. Let's move on to what it looks like to support language. So how can music therapists support kids with DLD? First, we'll be talking about supporting participation of kids with DLD in music therapy. So here are some general strategies used to support kids with DLD. Using simple and clear language. So avoid long and complex sentences and use literal language rather than metaphors. Give extra time to process. Pause after giving instructions or asking questions, as kids with DLD may need more time to understand and respond. Break down tasks into short sentences. So rather than using multi-step tasks or long tasks, break them into smaller, more manageable chunks. You can present one step at a time, or if you need to do multi-step tasks, you can use checklist or numbered instructions. Teach vocabulary explicitly. So you need to introduce and explain vocabulary before using it in context. Explain the meaning of the word and use it and try to use first-hand experience or background knowledge to support the child's learning. Use gestures and visual cues. You can reinforce messages with gestures, facial expressions, and visual cues, and this can help bridge the gaps from not understanding language. Repeat and rephrase instructions. So if they don't understand your instructions, you can say it again and use different language. Chunk information into short sentences. Instead of using one long sentence, try using 2 or 3 shorter sentences. This breaks it up into manageable, small pieces of information. Provides visual supports. Use pictures, diagrams, symbols, and visual timetables. This can help kids understand and retain information better. Model language use. So when you're speaking, model full sentences with the target vocabulary and use correct grammar. Use clear spoken and written language. Next, we'll talk about language focus, music therapy, and collaboration. So how do I choose language-based goals? First, you can connect with the SLP. You can ask the client's SLP if there are any goals that you can support in music therapy. And second, you can connect with their teacher. You can ask them what they're working on in class and what would be beneficial for the student to get more support in. So, what are the benefits of connecting and collaborating with SLPs? Goals. SLPs have a deep understanding of speech and language and can identify goals that should be worked on. They can explain and give you resources for what you can work on in music therapy to support your client's language. Shared knowledge. Collaborating with SLPs can increase the SLP's knowledge about music therapy and the music therapist's knowledge about SLP. Both music therapists and SLPs can benefit from sharing knowledge with each other. And quality of care. Collaborating with SLPs enhances the quality of care for clients. So this is just a stat of how much music therapists actually collaborate with SLPs, which is pretty a high amount of time. In a survey, they got back that around 39% of music therapists collaborate with SLPs. So next, I wanted to go through a couple different types of intervention approaches, just to get you familiar with some information that the SLP might give to you when talking about things that the child's working on in language. So there's domain-specific approaches and domain-general approaches. First, we'll talk about domain-specific approaches. It focuses on deficits in particular aspects of language and targets the areas that need support, whereas domain-general approaches focuses on targeting underlying cognitive processes that support language learning. So, domain-specific approaches. There's 3 major types of categories that are worked on within domain-specific approaches. First, there's phonological processing. This is the ability to recognize, remember, and manipulate the sounds in spoken language. This is important for hearing the difference between words, such as between cat and bat, putting the words together and breaking them apart, so recognizing that k, a, t is cat, and then vice versa, knowing that the word cat has the sounds k, a, and t. And then finally, holding sounds in memory long enough to use them. Next, there's morphosyntactic processing. This is the ability to understand and use grammar rules. This is important for understanding sentences and for using language in an accurate way that others can understand. So for this, would be using the right verb endings. So like, he ran today versus he runs today. And finally, semantic processing. This is the ability to understand the meaning of words, use them, and know how they relate to other words. This is important for understanding language, learning new vocabulary, expressing ideas, and making connections and inferences. Domain-general approaches. So, as I mentioned before, these focus on underlying mental and neural systems that support language, and then they also serve other non-related functions. Children may have a deficit in these systems rather than a domain-specific deficit. And this deficit would be seen in both language and non-language functions. What are the benefits of music therapy? The benefits of music therapy for language. Repetition. Music allows for repetition in tasks in numerous ways, and it can also give meaning to repetitions. This can provide increased exposure to new words and a lot of practice. Retention. Music can help with retention of information, such as word meanings. And motivation. Music is motivating and enjoyable for children and provides immediate reinforcement. Social interaction. Music provides opportunities for social interaction and connection with peers, and it can have less reliance on language for this social interaction. Focus on strengths. Music can incorporate the child's strengths, such as nonverbal communication. And self-expression. Music provides an opportunity for and can enhance self-expression. Generalization. Getting practice in other contexts for language goals worked on in speech therapy can help with generalization of skills. Participation. Using language strategies to support kids who struggle with language within music therapy can also support these children's participation in the session. So now let's practice with a couple cases. Case number 1. You're doing a music therapy session in a classroom, and you're working on writing a song as a group. You notice that one of the kids doesn't seem to understand your instructions, isn't answering questions, and is staying quiet during discussions about the song. What could you do to support this client to participate in this songwriting activity? I'll give you a few moments to think about this. Okay, so here's a couple answers for case 1. You can use the general strategies that I talked about earlier in the presentation. This can support their understanding and their participation. So for supporting understanding instructions, you can break the tasks into smaller parts, use gestures and visual cues to support your language, and if they're still having difficulty, you can repeat and rephrase instructions and provide visual supports. For participating in answering questions and group discussions, you can also give the whole group time to process and think before asking for answers. And second, you can use non-language participation. So to ensure that they can participate in the activity, you could provide options to participate that don't rely on language. This could include selecting from a list, voting for options, etc. Case number 2. You start working with a client who attends speech therapy sessions each week. Their parent asks you if you can incorporate some of the things their child's SLP has asked them to practice throughout the week. What should you do to incorporate language into your music therapy sessions? Case 2 answers. Ask the parent if you can contact the SLP. This way you can get a clear explanation of what your client's working on, how you can support their practice, and you can also get any questions you have answered by the SLP. This way you can draw upon the SLP's knowledge and then incorporate that into your music therapy session. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you. And here are my references.